The morning started like any other in Washington, D.C., gray skies, restless traffic, and the quiet hum of anticipation that always seemed to hang over the Capitol. But that calm shattered in seconds when a single headline flashed across every major news network. Denzel Washington announces presidential run. The words hit America like a shockwave. Within minutes, Twitter exploded, news anchors stumbled over their lines, and political strategists went into meltdown. Denzel Washington, the two-time Oscar-winning actor known for his integrity, silence in controversy, and unshakable poise, had just stepped directly into the political arena. And his first target? Donald J. Trump. Reporters scrambled outside the small, sunlit auditorium where Denzel was expected to speak. Inside, the atmosphere was electric. Journalists whispered in disbelief, cameras hummed, and staffers moved like clockwork. Everyone knew something historic was about to happen, but no one was ready for how direct, how bold, his words would be. When Denzel finally stepped onto the stage, the room fell silent. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't acting. His eyes carried the weight of conviction, the kind that made people listen before he even spoke. "I'm not running for power," he said, voice steady but resonant. "I'm running because truth shouldn't be a performance. I've seen what happens when leadership turns into theater, and I refuse to watch the country I love lose its soul." The crowd erupted. Flashbulbs ignited like 1,000 tiny explosions. Across the nation, millions paused, some in disbelief, some in hope. But in Mar-a-Lago, one man was already watching, arms crossed, jaw clenched. Donald Trump leaned closer to the TV screen, muttering under his breath, "So, he wants a fight?" The stage was set. America was about to witness a political showdown unlike anything it had ever seen, an actor who embodied truth versus a politician who mastered spectacle. And this time, the cameras weren't rolling for a movie. Within hours of Denzel's announcement, the world tilted. CNN interrupted its programming mid-sentence, Fox News called it a Hollywood stunt, and the New York Times pushed a breaking banner across every screen: "Washington takes on Trump, a new political earthquake." Airports, diners, barbershops, everywhere people argued, debated, speculated. Was this real? Could an actor, even one as respected as Denzel, actually stand against the political machine that had defined America's last decade? Some dismissed it as another celebrity vanity move. Others whispered something different: maybe he's the only one who can beat him. Behind closed doors, the political establishment scrambled. Campaign managers who once laughed at the idea of outsiders were now dusting off opposition files. Denzel's record was spotless: no scandals, no leaked tapes, no corruption trails. His biggest flaw: he believed too deeply in what he said. Meanwhile, Trump's team met at Mar-a-Lago that evening. He paced the room, phone in hand, ranting about liberal elites and Hollywood phonies. But his advisors were uneasy. "Mr. President," one of them said cautiously, "he's not like the others. People trust him." Trump froze for a moment, then smirked. "Trust doesn't win elections," he said. "Fear does." But while Trump plotted his counterattack, Denzel's campaign grew by the hour. Donations flooded in, volunteer networks formed overnight, and hashtags like #Washington2028 and #TruthOvershow trended worldwide. In a country exhausted by noise, Denzel's calm, deliberate tone hit like thunder. He wasn't playing politics. He was rewriting the script. And somewhere deep inside the White House, a whisper began to spread, quiet, cautious, and electrifying: what if he actually wins? 3 days later, the nation saw something it hadn't in years: a crowd united not by outrage, but by hope. The rally in Atlanta was supposed to be small, a symbolic start. But by sunrise, thousands had already gathered, waving homemade signs that read "Leadership with Integrity" and "Washington for Washington." Helicopters circled overhead. News crews lined the streets. Even political veterans admitted they hadn't seen energy like this since Obama's 2008 campaign, only this time, it felt raw, unfiltered. When Denzel stepped onto the stage, dressed in a simple black suit and no teleprompter in sight, the crowd erupted. He waited for the noise to fade, then leaned into the mic and said, "You know, they told me I was crazy to do this. They said I should stay quiet, stay comfortable, stay safe. But comfort never built a country." The audience roared, chanting his name. The camera zoomed in, his face calm, but his eyes burning with conviction. "This isn't about left or right," he continued. "It's about right or wrong. It's about a nation that forgot how to listen, and a people who forgot how powerful they are." Pundits watching from newsrooms couldn't help but take notes. The man didn't sound like a politician. He sounded like a truth-teller who had wandered into a game he never wanted to play, and was somehow winning. Trump's team, meanwhile, monitored the rally from a control room. His communications director muttered, "He's pulling independents. Even moderates are turning." Trump waved it off with a scoff, but his eyes betrayed unease. "He's an actor," he said. "They always forget the script eventually." Back on stage, Denzel ended his speech not with promises, but with a challenge. "America doesn't need another performance. It needs purpose. And purpose starts with all of you." For the first time in years, people left a political event not angry, not scared, but ready. And in living rooms across the country, one question began to spread like wildfire: could Denzel Washington actually be the one? By the end of the week, the political calm was gone. The media storm had arrived. Fox News labeled Denzel Hollywood's latest liberal fantasy. CNN called him the voice of decency America's been waiting for. Every outlet, every pundit, every politician had something to say. But the loudest voice, as always, belonged to Donald Trump. At 3 a.m., Trump posted on Truth Social, "Denzel Washington, a fake tough guy who reads lines written by others. I built this country's economy, he just acts in movies about it. Total joke." Within minutes, it had millions of shares. His followers flooded social media with memes, mockery, and old movie clips twisted out of context. But Denzel didn't respond, not a word. And that silence drove Trump mad. Inside Trump's inner circle, advisors urged caution. "He's not Biden, sir," one warned. "Every time you attack him, he gains ground." But Trump waved his hand dismissively. "I don't lose to actors," he said. "Ask Alec Baldwin." The room laughed, but uneasily. Meanwhile, Denzel's team gathered in a quiet campaign office in Atlanta. Screens glowed with news headlines and data charts. One advisor looked nervous. "We're being attacked non-stop. He's trying to bait you." Denzel leaned back in his chair, expression steady. "He wants a show," he said. "We'll give him substance." That same evening, he recorded a short message: no studio lighting, no teleprompter, no edits. Just Denzel, sitting in his living room, speaking directly into a phone camera. "I don't respond to insults," he said softly. "I respond to results. And right now, this country needs results more than revenge." The clip went viral. Within 12 hours, it had 40 million views across platforms. Hashtags like #ResultsNotRevenge and #Denzel2028 trended for days. Trump fired back with another post, then another, then 10 more. But something was shifting. For the first time in years, his words didn't dominate the conversation. Because America wasn't listening to the noise anymore. It was listening to the man who refused to shout. It was the most anticipated broadcast in a decade, Trump versus Washington, the first debate. Networks sold out ad space weeks in advance. Security was tighter than at any inauguration. Tens of millions tuned in, waiting for the clash that promised to redefine the election. When the cameras went live, the two men stood opposite each other under blinding white lights. Trump looked impatient, jaw tight, ready to attack. Denzel stood calm, hands folded, almost still, the image of composure. The moderator barely finished his opening before Trump jumped in. "Denzel, you're a great actor, but this isn't Hollywood," Trump sneered. "You don't lead a country by giving speeches. You lead it by winning." The crowd murmured. Denzel waited a beat, his silence sharp as glass. Then he smiled slightly. "You're right," he said. "But you don't lead it by dividing it either." The audience erupted. Even the moderator had to pause. Trump waved his hands dismissively, but Denzel continued, voice steady. "America's not a business to be owned. It's a promise to be kept. And right now, that promise is broken, not by policies, but by pride." Commentators watching from studios whispered, "That landed." Trump hit back with numbers, slogans, and jabs, but Denzel never flinched. Every insult rolled off him like rain off glass. At one point, Trump interrupted for the 7th time. Denzel looked directly into the camera and said, "This is the problem. We keep interrupting each other instead of listening. We can't fix America if we can't even finish a sentence." The crowd went silent. Then applause. Then standing applause. By the end of the night, even conservative outlets admitted the unthinkable: Denzel hadn't just survived. He'd won. Clips from the debate dominated every feed. His closing line echoed across headlines. "The truth doesn't need to shout to be heard." And in that moment, America realized something had changed. This wasn't just a campaign anymore. It was a reckoning. The morning after the debate, America was still buzzing. Every headline screamed the same message in different words. Washington dominates the stage. Trump outshouted, outplayed, outclassed. A star-turned-statesman. Clips from the debate flooded every platform. Denzel's calm stare during Trump's outbursts became an instant meme. The caption read, "When you're the adult in the room." Even late-night hosts, usually divided, agreed, something extraordinary had happened. In coffee shops, offices, and classrooms, people weren't just discussing politics, they were quoting him. "We can't fix America if we can't even finish a sentence." That line alone sparked millions of shares. Teachers printed it on posters. Veterans tweeted it with flags. For the first time in years, a candidate's words united more than they divided. Meanwhile, inside Trump Tower, the mood was darker. His campaign manager, Kelly, laid out polling data that no one wanted to see. "Sir, he's up 8 points nationally. Independents are flipping. Even some Republicans." Trump slammed his hand on the table. "They'll come back. They always do." But deep down, he knew the pattern was breaking. The insults weren't working. The showmanship wasn't landing. The man on the other side of the stage didn't play by his rules, and worse, he didn't react to them. Denzel, meanwhile, refused every major interview request. No morning shows, no late-night appearances, no flashy PR. He simply returned to the road, holding small town hall meetings, listening more than talking. Cameras captured him kneeling to speak with veterans, hugging families of fallen soldiers, helping a kid fix his bike in Michigan. When reporters asked why he was avoiding the spotlight, he smiled. "Because the spotlight isn't where change happens." That line, like everything he said, spread like wildfire. Trump's next move had to be big, something loud enough to shift the narrative. His advisors whispered about a scandal strategy. Opposition research files piled up. Fake headlines began appearing on fringe sites. But the public had grown weary of outrage. And this time, America didn't seem so easily fooled. Within days, the counterattack began. Anonymous sources leaked stories claiming Denzel had ties to radical groups. A tabloid splashed headlines about Hollywood hypocrisy. Hashtags like #FakeWashington and #DenzelDeception trended overnight. The machinery of modern politics was roaring at full power, funded, organized, and relentless. Trump went live on Truth Social, waving papers before the camera. "We've got the documents, folks. He's not who he says he is. Total fraud." The crowd at his rally roared. Cameras zoomed in on his triumphant grin. But in Atlanta, Denzel's campaign office remained calm. No panic, no chaos. His communications director read the headlines, sighed, and turned to him. They're going all in, sir. What do you want us to do? Denzel took a sip of coffee, eyes thoughtful. Nothing, he said simply. Nothing? He nodded. They're expecting a fight. If we swing back, we prove their point. If we stay still, truth speaks louder than noise. It was a gamble, the kind that could sink a campaign. But it wasn't hesitation, it was control. The next morning, he released one short statement. No dramatic press conference. No attack ad. I've spent my life telling stories. This time, America is writing its own. And no lie will change that. That was all. Just 60 words. But somehow, those words hit harder than every speech combined. The smear stories began to unravel. Fact-checkers dismantled the claims one by one. Even some conservative commentators began to question the chaos. Then came the turning point. A young Trump supporter posted a video. I voted red my whole life, he said. But when I watched Denzel not take the bait, I saw a man, not a politician. Within hours, it had over 20 million views. By staying silent, Denzel had done what few politicians could, he'd turned an attack into admiration. Trump fumed behind closed doors. He's not fighting. How do you fight someone who won't hit back? One advisor whispered carefully, you don't, sir. You outthink him. But by then, it was clear. Denzel wasn't playing their game, he was rewriting it.by October, what had started as a campaign had transformed into something much larger, a movement. Crowds filled parks, gymnasiums, and city squares across the nation. It wasn't the usual political spectacle, no blaring music, no angry chants, no sea of slogans. It was quieter, deeper. People came not to be entertained, but to believe again. In Philadelphia, an elderly woman held a sign that read, "We don't need a savior. We need sanity." In Houston, a group of veterans saluted as Denzel spoke. In Detroit, a former Trump voter said on live TV, "He reminds me what dignity looks like." It wasn't fame driving it, it was fatigue. America was tired of noise. Tired of outrage. Tired of being divided like a brand war. Denzel represented something that felt lost, calm strength. Meanwhile, inside Trump's Florida compound, frustration was reaching a breaking point. Advisors argued over strategy. Some pushed for a full-scale media offensive. Others begged for restraint. Trump ignored them all. He's an actor. I've built towers, empires, he shouted. How can people believe him? But they did. Poll after poll showed Denzel leading, not just among moderates, but even among disillusioned conservatives. His speeches were measured, his tone consistent. He never promised miracles. He promised work. In one rally, he stood before thousands and said, I don't want to be your celebrity. I want to be your servant. Leadership isn't about who yells the loudest, it's about who listens the longest. That line exploded online. Within 48 hours, clips of it had reached 100 million views. Teachers played it in classrooms. Pastors quoted it in sermons. Even celebrities who had sworn off politics started speaking up. Tom Hanks, Morgan Freeman, and Viola Davis all publicly endorsed him. It wasn't a party anymore, it was momentum. Trump's campaign tried one last push, a televised exposé special meant to paint Denzel as out of touch. But ratings plummeted midway. People had already switched channels, not to entertainment, but to hope. Because for the first time in decades, America wasn't watching a show. It was waking up to a story that felt real. The night before Election Day felt unlike anything America had seen in decades. Streets buzzed, not with protests or parades, but with a quiet, electric suspense. From Los Angeles to Atlanta, families sat glued to their televisions. Commentators repeated the same phrase over and over, this election feels different. In New York, Trump prepared for his final rally. The venue blazed with red, white, and gold lights. His team had one last trick, a sudden press leak claiming Denzel had secret Hollywood backers with foreign interests. It was thin, desperate, but in the final hours, desperation was currency. "Push it everywhere," Trump barked. They need to doubt him, even for one night. Across the country, in a modest hotel room in Chicago, Denzel sat quietly with his campaign team. No teleprompter, no cameras. Just a handful of trusted aides and a single live broadcast window open for his final message to the nation. When the camera light turned red, he looked straight ahead, calm, grounded. "Tomorrow isn't about who's right or left," he began. "It's about who remembers that this country belongs to all of us." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't point fingers. Instead, he spoke about forgiveness, unity, and rebuilding what had been broken. "They've called me every name in the book," he said with a half-smile. "But I'm not here to play a role. I'm here to remind us who we are when the cameras turn off." The speech lasted 7 minutes. No drama, no theatrics. But when it ended, something extraordinary happened: silence. A long, heavy, emotional silence that swept across living rooms and car radios alike. Within hours, hashtags flooded social media, #OneVoice, #DenzelForAll, #CalmWins. Trump's final rally, by contrast, was chaotic. Microphone feedback, staff shouting, a restless crowd waiting for fireworks that never came. He tried to spark energy, calling Denzel Hollywood's puppet and too soft for politics. But the crowd seemed tired. The cheers came late. The laughs felt forced. Even Fox anchors hesitated, their voices flatter than usual. By midnight, everyone knew the truth: the noise was fading. The calm was taking over. Dawn broke over Washington, D.C., painting the sky in soft amber light, the kind that feels like change. News anchors barely kept their composure as the numbers came in: Denzel Washington, 312 electoral votes. Donald Trump, 226. The nation had spoken. Outside the Capitol, crowds gathered, not in fury or frenzy, but in awe. Some cried. Some stood silently, phones lifted high, recording history. The headlines rolled in within minutes. Actor. Leader. President. America chooses dignity. Trump's campaign issued a brief statement refusing to concede, citing irregularities, but even his own advisors looked defeated. His last public appearance that night was subdued: no grandstanding, no roaring crowd. Just a man staring at a map that no longer glowed red. Meanwhile, Denzel stood backstage at his headquarters in Atlanta, the room still buzzing with disbelief. When his team handed him a microphone, he waited for the cheers to settle. Then, in that same steady voice that had carried him from movie screens to the world stage, he began. "Tonight isn't about me. It's about what we remembered, that leadership isn't volume, it's vision. And our story as a nation isn't over. We just turned the page." The room erupted, but Denzel raised his hand gently, quieting the crowd. "Now comes the hard part. Not the fight, the healing." It wasn't cinematic. It was human. Across the world, newspapers hailed it as the Washington moment. A symbol of how dignity could still win in an age of outrage. Commentators called it a revolution of tone. But beyond the headlines, something deeper had shifted. For millions watching that night, it wasn't just about politics, it was about possibility. A man who had spent his life portraying heroes on screen had become one in reality, not by shouting louder, but by standing taller. And as he stepped into the White House weeks later, cameras flashing, he whispered to an aide beside him, almost to himself. "Let's make calm contagious." The words would echo across generations, the line that defined not just a campaign, but a new chapter in American history. In a world full of noise, one man reminded us that strength doesn't have to shout. If this story inspired you, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, because the calm revolution has only just begun.